2 hours, the presenters on every news channel were saying,
The Spencer silence is over. For years, Diana's sister stood by Harry through every decision. She was his shield and his last connection to the woman he lost. But that shield is shattered, especially when Meghan Markle came into the picture. Diana's sister has finally spoken. The words, brutal. The fallout, total. Harry's narrative is collapsing in real time. Today we reveal the truth that has left the prince completely devastated. We are witnessing the end of an era. We are about to watch the moment the final pillar of support has been kicked out from under a man who built his entire public identity on the ghost of his mother. The silence is shattered. For decades, the Spencer silence stood like a wall, a bulwark. It protected Harry. It was his anchor and the only thing standing between him and the harsh reality of his choices. But now, the wall is down. The anchors are cut. The Spencer family has spoken. The words were not whispers. They were thunderclaps. They shattered the status quo. The fallout? It is total. Harry's narrative is in pieces. The man who thought he had an endless supply of protection just lost his last resort. The Spencer silence was a shield. For years, it protected the memory of Diana. It was a vow, a solemn promise. They kept the secrets and guarded the legacy. They watched from the shadows. Diana's sister was his last connection to the woman he lost. Every time the world turned against him, he knew the Spencers were there. They were the ones who truly knew Diana, and the ones who carried the weight of the tragedy. For Harry, they were the ones who understood the pain. When he felt the monarchy closing in, he turned to them. He brought his wife to see them and sought their blessing. Harry needed to believe that his mother's family, the people who loved her most, understood his choices. He needed the Diana stamp of approval. But that shield is shattered. Diana's sister has finally spoken. Harry's narrative is collapsing in real time. For a long time, the Spencers played the part. They were quiet and dignified. They were the silent supporters of the rebel prince. They saw the pain in his eyes and the reflection of their lost sister. It was a beautiful dynamic. It gave Harry legitimacy and strength. But there was a fracture, a growing invisible line. Behind the scenes, things were changing. The Spencers are traditionalists. They value the institution in a way Harry might not fully grasp. They value the dignity of silence and the duty of the Spencer name. As the years went on, that silence became heavier. It became a burden. When the podcast started, they watched. When the books were published, they read. When the documentaries aired, they listened. They saw a narrative they didn't recognize. They saw a man they didn't understand. Instead of talking, they remained quiet. But the resentment was building. You can only ignore a storm for so long before it breaks. For Diana's sister, the storm finally reached the point of no return. What broke the dam? It wasn't just one thing. It was an accumulation of moments. It was the feeling that the memory of Diana was being exploited, and the feeling that the very institution Diana loved was being systematically dismantled by the man who was supposed to be its protector. It was a private conversation that turned into a public realization. When the news first broke, the world barely reacted. We are used to noise and tabloid headlines. But this was different. This was the Spencers, the blood of the princess. The people who were supposed to be Harry's final line of defense. And they chose to attack. The words were brutal, calculated, and direct. The impact? It left Harry devastated. A man who built his entire public identity on the ghost of his mother has just been told by the keeper of that ghost that he has lost his way. We are not just talking about a family argument. We are talking about the end of an era. The Spencer family stood by Harry through everything, through the departures, interviews, and accusations. Until now. This is the story of the day the Spencers chose sides. This is the day Harry realized his past can no longer protect his future. He is on his own. The silence is gone, and in its place is a deafening, terrifying truth. The Spencer shield, a fortress built of blood. The Spencer silence was more than a gesture. It was a fortress. For years, it stood as the ultimate wall. It wasn't made of stone or brick or mortar. It was made of blood. It was made of shared memory. Diana's sister was not just an aunt, she was a keeper of the flame. Harry knew this. He relied on it. When the world turned gray, he looked to her. When the palace walls closed in, he looked to her. She was his anchor. She was the last piece of the puzzle, the piece that proved he wasn't just a royal, but a Spencer. The world watched and analyzed, but the Spencers? They stayed quiet, they kept their eyes down. They offered a nod and a hand, they played the role of the silent witness. It was a powerful performance. It gave Harry the one thing he craved most: legitimacy. They provided the Diana stamp of approval. Every time he walked with her, the message was clear. For a long time, it worked. It kept the critics at bay and silenced the skeptics. It was the shield that protected his narrative. Harry built his life on that foundation. He believed the Spencers would always be there and the silence would never end. But silence is fragile. It is a choice. And choices change. The cracks started small, almost invisible. A subtle shift in body language, a missed public appearance, a cold stare at the wrong moment. Harry didn't notice. Or maybe he chose not to. He was too busy, too focused on his own path, too convinced of his own rightness. He didn't see the shift behind the scenes, nor did he see the disappointment growing. He didn't see the resentment building up in the dark. He thought he was untouchable. He thought the Spencer name was his permanent guard. It wasn't. Diana's sister is a traditionalist. She values the institution. She doesn't make noise or do drama. Nor does she do podcasts. She doesn't write memoirs. She does duty, honor, and quiet sacrifice. Harry was doing the opposite. He was doing noise and drama. He was doing everything they stood against. Think about that friction. It was a slow burn and a constant clash. It was the sound of two worlds colliding. One world of quiet duty. One world of loud protest. The Spencers watched. They read the books. They listened to the interviews and saw the documentaries. Each one was a blow. It was a betrayal of the very things they held dear. They saw their sister's legacy being used and exploited. They saw it being twisted. They saw it being turned into a weapon. And they didn't like it. You can only watch a storm for so long. You can only ignore the wind for so long. Eventually the windows break. The water gets in and the structure fails. The Spencers were losing their patience. The Spencer shield was wearing thin. It was no longer a symbol of support. It was becoming a symbol of compromise. And they were done compromising. Harry didn't get the memo. He kept going. He kept pushing. He kept believing that she was on his side. He thought the silence was approval. He was wrong. The silence was just patience. And even the most patient people have a breaking point. We are talking about a woman who lived through the fire. She saw the pressure crush her sister. She saw the cost of the crown. She wasn't going to let that happen again. Not to the memory of Diana or the legacy of the name. The shield wasn't just breaking, it was being dismantled. Piece by piece, layer by layer, the protection was evaporating, and Harry was walking straight into the fire without a single flame retardant suit. He was losing his connection and grounding. He was losing his true north. And he was doing it all while thinking he was stronger than ever. The tragedy wasn't the silence breaking. The tragedy was that he never saw it coming. He never understood the price he was paying. He never realized that the Spencers were the only thing keeping him connected to the reality of his past. And now that connection is severed, the anchor is gone, the shield is shattered, and for the first time, Harry is truly on his own. The catalyst of conflict, the dinner of reckoning. The dam didn't break in a day. It broke in a moment, a specific moment. We look for the trigger, the catalyst, the spark that set the forest fire. Many think it was the books. Many think it was the interviews. They are wrong. It wasn't the public noise. It was a private sound, a conversation, a dinner, a look across a table. We have sources. Sources who were there. Sources who heard the temperature drop. The topic wasn't the weather. It wasn't the kids. It was the project. It was the path. It was the future. Harry arrived expecting a sanctuary. He went to them for comfort. He went for the usual nod and the Spencer stamp. He wanted to hear that he was doing the right thing. Harry wanted to hear that his crusade was righteous. He didn't get it. The silence didn't just end. It transformed and turned into a mirror. They looked at him. Really looked at him. Not as the prince, not as a celebrity, not as the global brand. They looked at him as the boy who lost his mother. And they didn't like what they saw. They saw a man losing his way. He was a man trapped in a feedback loop of his own grievances. They saw a man who had stopped listening. The conversation was brutal, not because it was loud, but because it was calm. They didn't shout or threaten. They dissected. They spoke about the institution and duty. They spoke about dignity and the things that Diana held dear, things that Harry, in his rush for independence, had started to trample. It was a cold, hard dose of reality. Imagine it. Harry, used to the echo chamber of his own team, used to the yes men, used to the digital applause. Suddenly, he was sitting across from the only person on earth who truly knew the truth of his mother's life. The only person who knew the cost of the crown. She told him he was crossing a line. She told him that love does not mean blindness. Those words hit like a physical blow. He didn't react with grace. He reacted with shock. He felt the betrayal and the cold air of the room. He realized in that singular moment that he was losing his grip on the only heritage that actually mattered to him. He wasn't fighting the palace anymore. He was fighting his own blood. The sister saw the panic in his eyes. She saw the confusion. She saw the refusal to accept the truth. He doubled down and argued. Harry defended the indefensible. That was the moment the shield shattered. It wasn't a PR disaster. It was a family tragedy. The sister realized that the Harry she knew was gone. The boy who needed guidance had turned into a man who was past the point of return. She didn't walk away. She was pushed away. Think about the psychology of that. For the Spencer family, the silence was a vow, a promise to protect the memory of Diana. By staying quiet, they were honoring her. By speaking up, they were doing the exact same thing. They realized that their silence was no longer a shield for him. It was a shield for his mistakes. It was an enabler, and they refused to be enablers any longer. She walked out of that room, but she didn't walk away from the truth. The message was clear. The bridge wasn't just burned, it was dismantled. Harry left that dinner in a blur. He didn't understand the magnitude of what had just happened. He thought he could fix it and win them back. He thought the Spencer name would always be a permanent guard. He was wrong. The dam had broken. The water was rushing in, and the only thing he had left to hold onto was the illusion that he was the victim. He didn't see the shift in the tide. He didn't see the power move. He was too busy looking at his own reflection. But the Spencer sister, she saw everything. She saw the end. She saw the outcome. She had finally set the record straight, and for Harry, the long, quiet, lonely road was just beginning. He had walked into that dinner thinking he was the hero. He walked out knowing he was the outsider. And that truth, it is the most dangerous thing of all. This dinner wasn't just a confrontation. It was the final autopsy of a relationship that Harry had been slowly killing for years. He thought he was untouchable because he was a prince, but sitting there, across from his own flesh and blood, he realized he was just a man, and not a particularly admirable one. The psychological implications of this dinner ripple outwards. It isn't just about the Spencer family, it's about the erosion of his self-image. For years, Harry has curated a version of himself that is righteous, persecuted, and uniquely connected to the truth. That version of himself is contingent upon the support of the people who knew Diana best. Without that support, he is just a man with a list of grievances. And the Spencer sister didn't just walk out of a dinner. She walked out of his worldview. She effectively stripped him of his legitimacy, leaving him standing in the cold light of day. This was the moment his hero's journey turned into something much less flattering, a cautionary tale. He walked into that room with the arrogance of a man who believes he has the moral high ground, and he left with the realization that he is standing on shifting sand. The brutal words, the diagnosis of a malfunction. The quote is already infamous. It is whispered in corridors, debated in boardrooms, and analyzed in backrooms across the world. The words are simple, elegant, and ultimately lethal. We love him. We always will. But love does not mean blindness. We cannot support a path that tears down the very things she held dear. Read those words again. Let them sink in. Love does not mean blindness. This is not a criticism, and it is not a jab. This is a diagnosis. Diana's sister is not speaking as an aunt. She is speaking as a surgeon, slicing through the noise, looking at the man and seeing the malfunction. She is telling him he is lost, his vision is warped, and his view of reality is not reality at all. And the second part of that quote, it is even worse. We cannot support a path that tears down the very thing she held dear. That is the dagger. She is not just attacking his actions, she is attacking his premise and his entire public identity. She is saying that everything he claims to be doing is actually the opposite. She is saying he is betraying his mother. Think about the weight of that. For a man who has made his life about protecting her legacy, to be told by her own blood that he is destroying it is catastrophic. There is no coming back from that, and there is no rebuttal or PR spin that can fix it. You can argue with a critic. You can dismiss a tabloid journalist, sue a publisher for defamation, or threaten a documentary crew. But how do you argue with the woman who shared a womb with your mother? How do you fight the person who held her hand? How do you refute the person who knew the truth of her life better than anyone else on this planet? You simply cannot. They aren't just experts on the situation. They are the ultimate stakeholders and the keepers of the flame. Their word carries an authority that no one else possesses, and she used that authority to pull the rug out from under him. She didn't just disagree, she dismantled him. She looked him in the eye and gave him the cold, hard truth. He didn't just lose her support. He lost his moral compass, safety net, and his last connection to a life that actually made sense. The echo chamber is gone. The yes men are silent. The digital applause has faded. All that is left is the silence he has to hear those words. He has to sit with them, confront the possibility that they are right, and admit that he has been profoundly wrong. The ego has been bruised, but the soul has been shattered. He is standing in the wreckage of his own story, looking at the pieces and realizing that the shield he thought he had was never a shield at all. It was a mirror, and he never liked what he saw in the reflection. The words were brutal because they were true, calculated because they were necessary, and direct because they were final. There is no ambiguity and no room for interpretation. They are done and finished. The Spencer shield is gone. Harry is finally, truly standing in the open. He is exposed, vulnerable, and forced to face the one thing he has run from for years: the truth. And the truth is the most dangerous thing of all. It leaves no room to hide. It leaves no room to run. It just sits there, heavy and absolute, waiting for him to acknowledge it. He didn't react with grace. He reacted with shock. He felt the betrayal in his marrow and the cold air of the room. He realized that he was losing his grip on the only heritage that actually mattered to him. He wasn't fighting the palace anymore. He was fighting his own blood, and that is a fight he was never going to win. Furthermore, consider the sheer strategic brilliance of her timing. She didn't launch a campaign or hire a PR firm to leak these comments. She waited until the moment when his narrative was already fraying, and then she delivered the final blow. It was an execution, plain and simple. She didn't just express a difference of opinion, she completely invalidated his life's work. She defined what his mother stood for, and in doing so, she relegated Harry to the position of a desecrator. This isn't just a family feud, it is a battle for the soul of Diana's memory. And by siding against him, she has sent a message that will resonate far beyond the confines of their private disagreement. The audience, the media, the public, all understand the weight of a maternal family member speaking up. They know that this is not about politics or money. It is about integrity. When the keepers of the flames say you are walking in darkness, the world is going to believe them. And that is the true, lasting legacy of this moment. Harry has been labeled. He has been defined. He is no longer the victim of the institution. He is the antagonist of his own history. And there is no amount of truth he can spin to reverse that tide. The royal reaction, the power of silence. The silence from the palace is not an accident. It is a tactical masterclass. They are watching and waiting. They are biding their time. You might expect a statement or a press release. You might expect a defensive maneuver, but you won't get one. They know the most powerful thing they can do is absolutely nothing. This silence is their greatest weapon. They understand that any comment would only dilute the Spencer intervention. They know the Spencer family has done the heavy lifting for them. They have achieved what years of palace press releases could never do. They have created a wedge, a permanent jagged divide between Harry and his own past. This is a strategic victory without a single shot fired. The palace is not celebrating. They are not popping champagne. They are maintaining the mask of professional detachment. But Behind closed doors, it is a different story. They know the tide has shifted and the narrative has changed. They understand the psychological weight of this moment. They recognize that the Spencer card has been played. It was not played in Harry's favor. The palace sees the isolation. They see Harry at the crossroads. They are watching him closely. Will he double down? Will he attack the Spencers? Will he go even further into the wilderness? Every choice he makes is being logged. Every reaction is being analyzed. They are looking for the moment he finally breaks. They are looking for the point where the weight of his own narrative becomes too heavy to sustain. The narrative is no longer Harry versus the royals. That was the old story. That was the script he wrote for himself. Now, the narrative is Harry versus the truth. It is a completely different fight, and it is a fight he is losing. The palace knows that the public perception is shifting. They see the comments. They see the polls and the exhaustion. They know that a significant portion of the public is now exhausted by the relentless cycle of grievances. The royal family is biding its time. They are watching the clock. They know the pressure on Harry is mounting. They know that he is looking for an exit, but he is running out of options. The Spencer family has stripped away his moral authority. The palace is just the silent observer of his decline. It is cruel, but it is effective. They have effectively turned the public sentiment against his methods, not by attacking him, but by allowing the Spencers to articulate the betrayal on behalf of everyone. For years, Harry wanted the palace to validate his struggle. He wanted them to acknowledge his pain and apologize. Now, they are refusing to even acknowledge his existence in the face of this Spencer rebuke. It is the ultimate cold shoulder. It is a dismissal that cuts deeper than any public statement ever could. It signals that he is no longer relevant to their internal politics, no longer a factor in their strategic planning. The tension in this silence is palpable. The palace is not just watching, they are waiting for the final collapse. They know that Harry is at a point of no return. The bridge is burned and ash. There is no going back to the way things were. The palace has already moved on. They have secured the narrative and reinforced the walls. And they are letting the world witness the inevitable outcome of his choices. So, while Harry reels, the institution remains. They are standing firm and absorbing the shock. They are letting the family drama play out in the arena of public opinion. And they are winning by doing absolutely nothing. It is a lesson in power that Harry has yet to learn. It is the lesson that the crown endures, even when the people underneath it change. They have mastered the art of the long game. And in this instance, the Spencer intervention provided the final move. The world is watching. The palace is watching. And Harry, he is finally, truly alone. He has been stripped of his shield, his support, and his narrative. He is left with only his own reflection. And for the first time in years, he is forced to see it without the filter of his mother's legacy to hide behind. Consider the cold, hard logic of this approach. By remaining silent, the palace isn't just ignoring him. They are emphasizing his insignificance. They are effectively telling the public that Harry is a problem for someone else to solve. They are no longer his primary target, and they aren't going to lower themselves to the level of a spat. This is a level of power that Harry simply cannot comprehend. He expects a reaction and engagement. By depriving him of that, the palace is making him spiral further into the void. It is a brilliant, ruthless display of institutional authority. They are not fighting him. They are simply outlasting him. And in the world of power dynamics, that is the most definitive victory you can achieve. The unforgiving future. A road of no return. The fallout is not a momentary tremor. It is a tectonic shift. The bridge between Harry and the Spencer family is not just scorched, it is completely dismantled. The trust has evaporated into the ether. There is no going back to the way things were. The intimacy is gone. The secrets are no longer shared. The silence that once protected him is now an abyss, and he is staring directly into it. He must now reconcile with the reality that his actions have consequences that go far beyond the courtroom or the media headlines. This is a permanent state of affairs. Even if there is a reconciliation, it will be a hollow performance. It will be polite and surface level. It will be for the cameras. The depth that once defined their bond has been replaced by a cautious distance. Harry has traded that sacred connection for a life of public protest. And he is finally beginning to understand the true devastating cost of that trade. The Spencers will remain in the background, but the anchor he leaned on for so many years has been pulled up. He is drifting, exposed, and stripped of the one thing that kept him tethered to the reality of his past. Harry's identity crisis is accelerating. For years, he looked to the Spencers to validate his narrative. They were his grounding wire. They were the ones who remembered the boy before the crown. Now, that mirror is shattered. He is left with a distorted image of himself. He is left with a reality he constructed to suit his own grievances, rather than a reality that reflects who he actually is. This is the existential crisis unfolding behind the walls of his home. He is not just worried about public opinion anymore. He is worried about the sanity of his own mission. If the people who knew the best version of him can no longer recognize the current version, then who is he? That is the question he cannot answer. The palace, meanwhile, is playing the long game. They watch and wait. They know they have won without firing a single shot. They don't need to attack or defend. They simply let the Spencer intervention do the heavy lifting. The palace knows that the public perception is shifting. They see the polls, fatigue, and exhaustion. They know that Harry is at a point of no return. The institution is standing firm and letting the drama play out in the arena of public opinion. It is a masterclass in professional detachment, and one that Harry is woefully unprepared for. The path ahead is dark. Harry has a choice, but his options are dwindling by the minute. He can continue to double down, surrounding himself with yes men and enablers who will only reinforce his worst instincts. He can continue to chase the ghost of the past while ignoring the brutal reality of the present. Or he can stop. He can listen and take the pain. He has an option of sitting with the discomfort and accept that the people who loved him enough to be cruel might be the only ones telling him the truth. It is the hardest choice a man can make. It is the choice to admit you are wrong and that you have been blinded. He is facing the reality of his life without the cushion of his family's support. He has built a home in a foreign country, but he has not yet built a home in his own heart. The isolation he feels is the direct result of the burning of bridges he once believed were permanent. He is the architect of his own exclusion, and the building he has created is becoming increasingly difficult to live in. The world watches, waiting to see if he will tear it down and start again. Or if he will continue to barricade himself inside, convinced that he is the only one who truly sees the truth. The world is watching. We are waiting to see what he does. We are waiting to see if he has the strength to change, or if he will let the weight of this truth pull him under. The story is not over. It is still being written, but the stakes have never been higher. The Spencer silence has been broken, and in its place is a deafening, terrifying reality that Harry can no longer escape. He is on his own, and for the first time, he has to face the truth without a shield. The road ahead is not paved with headlines, but with the quiet, grueling work of soul-searching that he has avoided for far too long. He is stripped of the protection of the past, left to survive the present without the one thing that made him feel safe: the validation of the people who knew his mother best. This isn't just the end of a family relationship, it is the death of his comfort zone. He is fundamentally alone, and in that isolation, he must confront the man he has become. What does a man do when his narrative falls apart? He either reconstructs it or he crumbles. Harry is at that crossroads. The pressure is mounting, the public is losing interest, and the only path left is to look within. It is a terrifying prospect, one that he has spent years running away from. But the Spencer intervention has ensured that he can no longer run. We are watching the end of an era. The Spencer influence on Harry was a bedrock of his public identity. It was a way to anchor his often erratic behavior in the tragic sacred memory of his mother. With that anchor gone, he is untethered. The implications of this are immense. It means he is no longer just a royal who left. He is now an outsider within his own carefully constructed world. The Spencers, by speaking out, have effectively told him that his mother's legacy is no longer a shield for his behavior, but a mirror reflecting his flaws. And that is a reflection he cannot escape. This story isn't just about the British royal family anymore. It's about the nature of legacy, the weight of expectation, and the devastating cost of personal choices. It's about what happens when you turn your back on the only people who truly knew you. Harry is learning that lesson in real time, under the gaze of the world. And the lesson is harsh. When you lose the people who anchor you in the truth, you become the author of your own isolation. He thought he was building a life, but in reality, he was dismantling everything that mattered. Now, he has to live in the space he created, and that space is empty, silent, and cold. We will stay right here, watch every move, and keep you informed of every twist. Because this story is far from over. It is only the beginning. The real drama is not in what has been said, but in what will be done in the shadows of this new, broken reality.